Okay. My name is Dawn, and I am with Utah Retirement Systems. And one of our jobs is to make sure that you understand the benefits that your employer, that the county provides for you as an employee, and especially if you are within your first year of employment. If you are Tier 2, which means you were hired into public employment for the first time anytime after July of 2011, then you have a decision to make within that first year. And so we want to make sure that you understand the decision that you have to make between the retirement plans that are offered, and then once you make your decision, that you understand that will provide for a retirement for you. So everybody here should have entered public employment for the first time after July 1st of 2011. If that doesn't fit you, then you can come to the next presentation. Anyone here still within their first year? Okay, so if you're within your first year, you have your decision to make. If you've already made your decision, then we'll just review, depending on which plan you chose, how that plan works. If you look at this handout right here, there are two plans that are described on this handout. The first one is the hybrid. The second one is the defined contribution plan. Box Elder County puts in 10% of your salary above and beyond what you are being paid as a public employee into a retirement plan, and you have to decide which plan you want that 10% to go into. The hybrid plan is a combination of a pension and a 401k. The defined contribution is strictly a 401k, what you'd find in the private sector, what a lot of people are more familiar with. Let's go over the hybrid plan first, and then we'll go over the defined contribution plan. So with the hybrid plan, as I mentioned, it combines a pension contribution with a 401k contribution. A pension is based on a formula, and it basically gives you a guaranteed income benefit in retirement. So with a pension, there is no lump sum of money, there's no big pool of money that has your name on it, that when you retire you can just go and spend it all. Instead, based on the number of years that you work, based on your salary, there's a formula, a calculation that's done that gives you a monthly income check that you cannot outlive. You can't outspend it. It is given to you every month, and if you so choose, you may elect an option if you are married at retirement to allow a spouse to continue with that benefit if you were to pass away first. So it's a benefit. It kind of works. A lot of people, relate it to Social Security. You pay. Are you guys Social Security exempt? Okay, so out of your paycheck, you pay 7.65% towards Social Security taxes, Medicare, Social Security taxes. And then when you go to file for Social Security, there is no pool of money with John's name on it. It's just based on your earnings and what age you're applying for Social Security benefits. They send you a monthly income check. That's the way the pension works. Very similar as far as a guaranteed monthly income check. Plus a small 401k contribution. If there is any money left over from the 10% that the employer is contributing towards the retirement, the pension is funded first, and if there's anything left over out of that 10% that isn't needed to go fund the pension, then that goes into a 401k contribution for you. So just some highlights on the pension piece. Again, it's guaranteed lifetime benefit. It's based on a formula, and there are minimum age and service requirements. And so if you look at this gray box in the middle of your page there, that's the formula. We're going to look at your years of service. Then we're going to look at multiply that by a factor of 1.5%. And then we look at your entire salary history as a public employee. We will find the 5 highest years, we will average those, and we'll use that as the final number in the formula. So there's an example here in the middle of the page, and it's here on the board. This person worked 35 years. We took 35 years, multiplied each one by 1.5%. 35 times 1.5% is 52.5. We looked at this person's 35-year working history as far as their salary history goes. We found the 5 highest years, and that averaged out to be $40,000. So 52.5% of $40,000 is a pension benefit of $21,000 a year. If you divide that by 12, that's $1,750 a month. So actually, before I move on, so if you are looking at which choice to make, one of the things that you want to consider is how long you think you may be working as a public employee. The more years you have and the higher your salary, or the higher your average salary, or I should say your average high 5, the higher that pension benefit will be. If you think that you may only be working for 5 years as a public employee and then leaving and going into the private sector and never returning, that is one of the things that you'll need to consider as you're deciding between the pension and the hybrid plan and the defined contribution plan. So again, with the hybrid, as it contains a pension based on a formula that includes the number of years of service, the more years you work, the higher your average salary, the higher that pension benefit can be. Probably the thing you have the most control over is your years of service. There is no cap. You can work more than 35 years. But if you don't work 35 years, there are some eligibility requirements in order to qualify for the pension. So let's go over those. And if you look on your sheet, it's this bullet point on the top right side. If you have your 35 years, it does not matter how old you are, you qualify for that pension. You could continue to work for longer, but if you are 55 years old with 35 years, let's say you started at age 20, you put in your 35 years, you're 55 years old, you qualify for that pension. You no longer have to continue to work in order to qualify for that pension without deduction. If you are 65, so let's say you started your career a little bit later, let's say you started at 55, and you've got 10 years in, you're 65. If you have 4 years of service at age 65, you also qualify for that pension without an early age reduction. So the two factors to qualify for the pension without an early age reduction are to be age 65 with at least 4 years, or to have your 35 years of service. If you don't meet one of those qualifications, there are 2 other options that will allow you to be eligible for the pension. However, there is an early age reduction associated with these 2. If you are 62 with at least 10 years, or if you are age 60 with 20 years, you qualify. However, because you're not 65 and you don't have your 35 years of service, there is an early age reduction, and that is listed right here, and it's also right here in the italicized print on your page. So if you are between ages 60 and 63, your pension's reduced approximately 7% per year. If you're between 64 and 65, it's 9% per year. So let's say your pension benefit, let's just say for simple math, was $1,000 a month. And you were age 62 with 10 years of service, and your pension was going to be $1,000 a month. The early age reduction would apply, and so between ages 64 and 65, it's 9% per year, and 60 to 63, it's 7% per year. So your pension would be reduced by 9% plus 14, so 23%. So we would take $230 off of your pension. So instead of getting $1,000, you would get, what did I say, 237, $770. So we're not going to make you work till age 65 if you don't want to, but you at least need to meet certain age and year requirements. Or if you do quit, you can come back at age 65 to claim the pension, and there is no early age reduction as long as you have those 4 years. Any questions on the requirements for the pension? Now, this is if you choose the hybrid plan.
How come it's changed from 30 years to 35?
It's a new retirement formula, 35 years. Yeah, Tier 1 is the 30. Yep. Okay, if you have, if you want to avoid that early age reduction, there are some ways that you can purchase service credit or purchase years worked outside of the Utah public employee system if you have service, qualifying service. So if you have public service in another state, if you have active full-time military service or any forfeited federal employment, let's say you worked at Hill Air Force Base for 4 years or out at the Army Depot in Tooele County for a few years, and you wanted to purchase those years or use those years towards your Utah retirement system, you can purchase those into the Utah retirement system. If you have, actually for these you can purchase at any time. The cost is going to be based on how many years you're purchasing, when you're purchasing them, what your current salary is. So if you are interested in ever purchasing, does anyone have outside service, by the way? Okay, so it may not apply to someone in this room. But if you do have outside service, we do have a calculator on our website that you can use to give you an idea of what that would cost. And then if you are serious in as far as looking into purchasing the service, we have the paperwork on our website. If you have at least 30 years or are age 65, you may purchase up to 5 years of future service to help you avoid that early age reduction as well. Again, we have a calculator on our website that could help you figure out what that would cost. But that is, these are a couple ways that if you were interested in avoiding the early age reduction associated with a pension, claiming it without 35 years or under age 65, these are a couple ways that you could get additional years of service. One of the nice things about the pension is that it does have a cost of living adjustment. So in this example, this person's pension benefit starts out at $1,750 a month in their first year of retirement. In year 2, so in month 13, we are going to look back at the last calendar year to see what the Consumer Price Index was. That's a federal index, so this is not set by the legislature. We're going to see what that was and use that to adjust your pension and give you a cost of living adjustment if there is a positive, there's positive inflation, or if the Consumer Price Index is above 0, if it's a positive number. So you may, in the second year, your pension may go from $1,750 a month to $1,775 a month or $1,780 a month, depending on what that Consumer Price Index is. It is capped at 2.5%, and we're at this second bullet point on the right-hand side. So if your benefit is $1,000 a month and the CPI was 2.5%, then you would get $1,025 the next year. And if it was 2.5% the following year, starting in year 3 of retirement, you would get the $1,025 plus another 25, so $1,050. It is a simple COLA. It's not compounded on the previous year's pension. It's always applied to the original benefit amount. If the CPI is ever over 2.5%, so let's say we have some high inflation years and the CPI is 4, we would give you the 2.5%, but because that's the cap, the difference between the 4% and the 2.5% that we can give you, so that would be 1.5%, is banked for you. And if there's ever a year where inflation is lower, let's say it's 2%, we would pull from that bank to bring you up to the 2.5% until that bank has been emptied. So if there's a year where it's 2%, we'd pull a half out if you've got something in your bank. If there's a year where it's 1.5, we could pull out another 1 until that bank has been emptied for you. So that is one of the nice things about the pension, because when you retire at, let's say, 65 and you want to, buy a loaf of bread or a movie ticket, at age 80, 15 years later, that loaf of bread or that movie ticket, that car, that pair of shoes will typically cost more. And so it is nice to know that it tries to keep up with inflation in retirement. Okay, so the rates. If you look at on the left-hand side, this is the first 3 bullet points. Your employer is going to contribute 10% towards the hybrid plan. The pension is always funded first, and if there's anything left over, it will go to the 401k. The rate or the cost of the pension is set every year, and it goes from July 1st to June 30th. Last year, the rate was 8.22%. That was the cost of the pension. That is also the rate for this coming year. So you'll notice at the top of this sheet, the rates are from July 1st, 2015 to June 30th, 2016. So every spring, we let employers know what that rate is so that they know what amount needs to go to fund the pension and then what amount needs to go to the 401k. The difference between the cost of the pension, so in this example, 8.22%, we're in the third bullet point down, and the 10%, the difference between the rate and the 10% would go into the 401k. So last year and this year, it would be 1.78 would be the 401k contribution, and that's right here. So the employer contribution's 10, the pension rate's 8.22, so your 401k is 1.78. This is a number that could vary each year that you're in the hybrid plan. If you are in the public safety and firefighter, the employer contribution's a little different. It's a little higher because their pension costs are higher, but they have the same formula as far as the difference would go into the 401k. Okay, so in this example, the employer contribution's 10, the pension rate bumps up to 9, so you can see the 401k contribution would be 1. What happens if the cost of the pension rate ever goes above 10%? Ever goes above what the employer is contributing? Where would the difference come from? Comes from the employee. So the employer knows that they're contributing 10%, that's their set cost. If something ever happened in the economy where the pension rate ever went above 10%, there is no 401k contribution because there's nothing left over, and then the difference comes from the employee's paycheck. So that is one of the things to be aware of with the hybrid plan, is that there could be a time at some point in the future that you would be required to contribute towards your retirement. Is that a bad thing? Not necessarily, to have to put, a little bit of money out of your paycheck towards your retirement. And then if things in the economy got better and the rates went back down below 10%, you would not be required to contribute any longer. I wouldn't let, this is one of the risks with the hybrid plan, but if the idea of having a pension is very appealing to you, I would not let this deter you from selecting the hybrid if that's if the pension is something that you would like to have in retirement. There is something written into the laws that govern the pension that says, if that employee contribution were ever unduly burdensome or something like that, they could revisit that. So just to let you know, that is a possibility. However, 10% has been set by the actuaries as a bar that we anticipate we really wouldn't get close to, or at least very often. So. This is our home page on our website. There is a link, even if you're not logged in, that you can click calculators, where you can go and put in your age, how many years you think you may be working in the system as a public employee, what your salary is now and how you think it will grow so that it could project out a high 5, and it will actually give you what that pension could look like in retirement. When you click on calculators, the URS pension plans has the retirement benefit estimate calculator. I would encourage you, especially if you're within your first year, go online, pull up that calculator, put in your specific situation as far as your age, spouse's age, salary information, just to get an idea of what that pension may look like in retirement. And this is just a picture of the screen. One thing to keep in mind is that when you go to the calculator, the second drop down says retirement system. The Tier 2 hybrid is not the default. The Tier 1 is. And so if you're going to run this calculator, make sure in the drop down right here that you select the Tier 2 hybrid. Otherwise, it's not going to give you an accurate calculation of that formula. Okay, so that's the hybrid plan. That's the plan under the green header. Any questions on that? Pension, based on a formula, small 401k contribution as far as the difference between what it costs to fund the pension and what the employer is providing. Okay, the DC, or the defined contribution, there's only 3 bullet points. So the DC plan is a little, maybe a little less complicated than the hybrid plan because there is no pension, there's no formula, there's no COLA or cost of living adjustment, there's no guaranteed lifetime income check. It's simply a 401k contribution by your employer. This is what you would find in the private sector, if your employer offers a 401k. So the main bullet points of the DC plan, the entire 10% that the employer is contributing goes into the 401k. For public safety, it's 12 because of their benefits are more expensive. There's a 4-year vesting, meaning that if you leave after 3 years, 11 months, and 2 weeks, that 401k cannot be rolled over into a new employer's plan. That same vesting is also on the hybrid 401k. So the small 401k contribution in the hybrid or the entire 10% going into the 401k in the defined contribution plan, they both have a 4-year vesting, meaning you have to be here at least 4 years, or with Utah Retirement Systems at least 4 years, in order to be able to take that 401k with you if you were to leave at some point in the future. After 4 years, you get to choose your investment option. So once you're vested, then you get to decide how that's invested, and we'll go over that in this brochure in just a minute. So with the DC plan, is there a monthly lifetime benefit? So what is it, if you choose the DC plan or the defined contribution, I'll just call it the DC just for short, what will that provide for you in retirement? Whatever the balance is, however you've invested it, however the markets have done. If your salary is $40,000, your employer is going to do 10%, so $4,000, and as you get pay raises, they'll still do 10% of your salary. As far as what it means for you in retirement, it's going to depend on how you've invested it and how the markets have done. Could you end up with more money in retirement if you choose the DC plan over the hybrid? Could you end up with less money? Yes. So here's what you need to know in order to know which one to choose. You need to know how long you're going to live, and you need to know what the markets are going to do between now and your last day on Earth. And if anybody knows the answer to those questions, let us know, because that is how you can decide what may be best for you. But if you're not quite sure, actually, let me go through this really quickly. Okay, so which plan is right for you? If you turn over on the back, a couple things to consider if you're in your first year. And by the way, in your first year, you can change your mind between these two plans as often as you'd like. Whatever plan you have selected that is in our system on the 1-year anniversary date of your hire is the plan that you will be in for the rest of your public employment. So it is an irrevocable decision at that 1-year mark, that 1-year anniversary date of employment, and it's irrevocable. You cannot change your mind. So that's why we want to make sure that you understand the differences between the two plans. They are both great plans. There's no one that's best. It just depends on your particular situation. So on the back of this, there are some things to consider between the two plans. The hybrid, guaranteed monthly income for life based on the formula. The DC plan, no guaranteed monthly income check. It's just going to depend on the contributions, the performance, and how long you live in retirement. If you only live a few years, that money may last your retirement and then some to pass on to beneficiaries. If you live 30, 40 years in retirement, there's a potential that you could run out of that money. Just, completely depends on investments and contributions to that pool of money. With the hybrid, on the pension side, you do not control how that pension is invested. So the 8.22%, the amount that the employer is putting into the hybrid plan and that goes to fund the pension is managed by professional pension managers. After 4 years on the DC side, and with the small 401k piece in the hybrid, you get to manage those investment choices. You can be really conservative, you can be really aggressive. So what that pool of money looks like is going to be completely dependent on investment performance. The hybrid does have a cost of living adjustment. There is no cost of living adjustment on the DC side because there is no monthly income check. Theoretically, if you had a pool of money from the DC side, from your 401k, and you were pulling out $1,750 a month, you could give yourself a cost of living adjustment if that pool allowed you to do so throughout your retirement. On the hybrid, there is a possible 401k contribution if the pension rate is below 10%. So right now the pension rate's 8.22. You get a 1.78% contribution for this year. On the DC side, the full 10% that the employer is providing goes into the 401k. One of the risks with the hybrid plan is if the cost of that pension ever does exceed 10%, then the employee would be required to contribute. If you choose the DC plan, you're never ever going to be required to put something towards the retirement plan out of your paycheck. If you stay within the Utah Retirement Systems, which is over 460 agencies, it's every county, state employment, every school district, special service districts, cities, municipalities, all of those agencies participate in the Utah Retirement System. So regardless of which plan you choose, whether the hybrid or the DC, that is portable among all of those Utah Retirement Systems. So if you work for Box Elder County for 10 years, and then you go work for Cache County for 10 years, and then you go work for Davis School District for 10 years, you've got 30 years towards a retirement plan. Whereas in the private sector, if you go work for JCPenney for 10 years and then you go work for GE for 10 years, those retirement plans don't work together to fund a retirement for you. So if you stay within the Utah Retirement System, those retirement plans are portable. If you choose the DC side and you leave after 4 years, you can take that 401k with you, roll it into a new employer's 401k or IRA, and it can continue to grow for you. On the hybrid side, a couple more things. Guaranteed monthly spousal payout options. So when you go to retire, if you are married and you want to elect an option where your spouse could continue that monthly income check, then you can make that election at that time, especially if you think that you may pass away before your spouse, depending on health issues, age issues. That monthly income check could provide for your retirement and then a continued retirement for a surviving spouse. On the DC side and on the small 401k with the hybrid, any balance when you pass away can go to a beneficiary that does not have to be a spouse. Okay, so if you are within your first year, this is some good guidelines to go through to look at kind of the advantages, disadvantages of the different plans. We also have the calculator on our website. We have a savings plan calculator for the 401k, and then we have the retirement estimate calculator for the pension. You have 1 year to decide which plan you want. You can change your mind as much as you want during the first year. If no choice is made, the hybrid system is the default. And by the way, even if you choose the DC, the defined contribution plan, in your first year, when you log into your account, it's going to appear as if you have the hybrid plan. The reason being is because you can change your mind theoretically every day, it would be an actuarial nightmare to switch you back and forth every single day. So if you've chosen the DC plan and you log into your account and your 401k balance seems pretty small, it's because you're shown as being in the hybrid plan for that first year. And on your 1-year anniversary, if you've chosen the DC plan, then you'll see that 401k balance bump up. Okay, any questions on Tier 2 retirement plan? Again, great benefit for your provided by your employer. If you were to go and meet with a financial planner in the financial planning industry, kind of an industry rule of thumb is that you should be saving about 15 to 20% towards your retirement. With the hybrid plan, with the Utah retirement system, whether you choose the hybrid or the DC, your employer is providing 10% towards a retirement plan. So that takes the burden off of you, makes it a little bit lighter as far as what you need to be saving. So that shifts the percentage that you may need to be saving out of your paycheck to less than what you would need to do if your employer was not providing a 10% contribution towards a retirement plan. So really good benefit. If you notice, the hybrid plan, even if you work 35 years, for example, it's only going to provide just over 50% of your current salary in retirement. So even if you put in a decent career into Utah or work with the county or Utah Retirement Systems agency, it's not going to fully replace your working income in retirement. And so we always encourage you, regardless of which plan you choose, to contribute to a retirement plan in addition to what your employer is providing. And that's what this booklet talks about. So does everybody have one of these investment options booklets? Okay, if you open up to the first page, right on the page 3, there are 4. Do you guys offer paying 457? Okay. So there are 4 retirement plans that you can participate in as an employee with Box Elder County. The 401k, the 457, traditional IRA, and Roth. Has anyone had a 401k with an outside employer? Okay. 401k, 457, that is the section of the tax code, section 401, subsection K, section 457 of the tax code that allow for employer-sponsored retirement plans. The main difference between the 401k and the 457 is that 457 plans are only available to public employees. So if you were to leave Box Elder County and go work for Walmart, you may have a 401k, but because they are not a public agency, you would not have a 457. The 401k and the 457 are very similar as far as the amounts that you can put in and how they work tax-wise. You get a tax deduction on the contribution that you make in the year that you make it. It grows tax deferred. You pull the money out when you retire to help supplement, your retirement, whether it's the hybrid that you've chose, the hybrid plan or the DC plan. The main difference is that on the 457, if you'll notice right here in the middle of the page, there is no early withdrawal penalty tax that you could potentially receive if you pulled money out of the 401k before a certain age. If you have money in the 401k or the traditional IRA, the IRS really wants you to use it as a retirement plan. And so they kind of want you to leave it in there so that it can help retirement, not to help supplement your trip to Vegas or your new Ford Mustang or whatever toy you may want to buy. So if you pull money out, you spend it before age 59 and a half, there is an early withdrawal penalty tax. That goes away with the 457. So if you think you're going to retire from the county at age 52, if you have the 457, you can pull money out with no early withdrawal penalty tax. It would be subject to federal and state income taxes, just like the 401k or the traditional IRA, but that early withdrawal penalty tax is not part of the 457 plan. You would have to be terminated or retired, so you couldn't still be working for the employer. You'd have to sever employment. Regardless of which plans you choose, you have the same investment options. So if you choose the 401k or the 457, you still have the same investment options. The traditional IRA and the first two, the 401k, the 457, so really the first three on the page, they are all very similar as far as the way they are treated for income taxes. The Roth, the last one listed, is the opposite of the first three. So with the first three, if you make $30,000 a year and you want to put 10% or $3,000 into a retirement plan and you pick one of the first three, you get to reduce your income in that year based on the contribution that you make. So if you contributed $3,000 out of your $30,000 salary, when you get your W-2 to file your taxes in the next year, it's going to show that you made $27,000. So you get to deduct that contribution in the tax year that you make it. And it will grow tax deferred, meaning if it makes earnings based on how you've chosen to invest it over 10 or 20, 25 years, you do not pay taxes along the way. You pay taxes on the contribution and any growth when you pull it out. The Roth is the opposite. If you make $30,000 and you want to put $3,000 into a retirement plan and you choose the Roth, your W-2 is still going to show $30,000. So it's made with after-tax money. However, let's say that continues to grow for 15 or 20, 25 years. When you go to pull money out of that Roth, you do not have to count any withdrawals or you don't have to show any of those withdrawals for tax purposes. So the contribution that you made was already taxed. Let's say your $3,000 grew to $20,000. You've got $20,000 that you can pull out without having to report any of it as taxable income. If you chose one of the first three and that $3,000 grew to $20,000 and you pulled $20,000 out, it would just be like you earned $20,000 and you counted as income. So it's kind of a balancing act between pay taxes now or pay taxes later, but we would encourage you to look at your tax situation, and of course we don't really know what taxes are going to be like in the future, but to look at the options that you have, and if the Roth fits into your plan, to really consider the Roth, because that's one of the few places that you can really you can earn money that the IRS doesn't want a piece of at some point. Your pension will be taxable, your Social Security will be taxable, withdrawals from your 401k, 457, traditional IRA will show as taxable income, the Roth will not. So it's really one of the few places that you can really earn income without having to pay taxes on it. If you turn to the next page, the middle of the booklet, as I mentioned, regardless of which plan you choose, you have the same investment options. These are our 8 core mutual funds or investment options. If you are a do-it-yourselfer and you want to pick your investment choices, you've got these 8 choices. They are listed on the page from most conservative, least volatile, least aggressive, least fluctuation. And as you go over to the page, more volatile, meaning more potential for ups and downs, more potential for earning, but also more potential for losses. There's a little risk speedometer down here at the bottom, kind of like the speedometer on your car, and you'll see the risk goes from low to high as you move across the page. One thing that I really encourage people to look at is over 10 years, you'll see that 2008 is included in there. Does anybody remember the markets in 2008, 2009? Not a fabulous year. However, if you look at what the funds did in the year or two after, they were pretty good years. So the reason I bring that up is because if you are investing for retirement, you really want to have a long-term picture or a long-term objective for those investments. You do not want to put money to put a down payment on a house in 2 years into your 401k or your 457. You really want to invest this for the long term, because over the long term you tend to hit the averages rather than just one of these individual performance years. We have the 1, 3, 5, and 10-year averages for each of these individual funds. You'll notice the 1, 3, and 5 year drop off or don't include 2008. and they're significantly higher typically than the 10-year. But I think that the 10-year average is important to look at because over your working career, if you have a 20, 30, 35-year working career, you're definitely going to experience some down years, maybe several down years. And so you don't want to plan on maybe the 1, 3, or 5-year type of performance. You want to look at the longer history of how things have performed to give you an idea of what you can expect in your retirement plan. If you are not a do-it-yourselfer, if you turn the page to page 6, this January we introduced our target date funds. We have 12 target date funds. The target date represents a year that we would anticipate you starting to withdraw the money and use it to supplement your retirement. There is a chart, a birthday chart on page 6, that if you invest in the 401k or if you choose the hybrid or the DC and after 4 years you become vested and you do not pick investment options, if you find where your birthday falls in this chart, the target date fund that's listed off to the side will be your default target date fund. And that would be the fund based on your birthday that would put you somewhere between ages 60 and 65. If you're planning on working till 70 or you're going to retire at 50, then you may not want the default target date fund. You may want to pick a fund that's further out in the future or closer than age 60 to 65. Because the target date funds rebalance and become more conservative the closer that target date year comes to the present date. So for example, if you look at the target date 2040 fund, if I was going to retire in 25 years, start pulling money out of my 401k, I may want to choose the 2040 fund because right now it's pretty aggressive. If you follow down below in this chart, right here, if you follow down below the 2040, you can see the percentages that are held in each of these individual mutual funds within the 2040 fund. So the target date is one fund, but it has a mix of these individual funds plus a few additional investment choices that are not available individually that give you an appropriate mix based on starting to spend the money or starting to withdraw the money close to that year. So if I'm 25 years from retirement, if retirement's way down the road, I probably want to be a little bit more aggressive with my mix because the longer you have to invest, the lower your risk becomes because you tend to hit those long-term averages. But as 2040 gets closer, so let's say we're in the year 2035, I'm going to retire in 5 years and start pulling the money out. My 2040 fund has shifted down this glide path, and now my 2040 fund is going to look like what the 2020 fund looks like. It would look 5 years away from the current year. So the target date funds actually shift for you to become more conservative so that you don't experience this kind of up and down as you get closer to pulling the money out. Most people, when they retire and their earning power has stopped, that money is what they have to live on, and they don't want to experience a lot of volatility because if it's gone, it's gone. So they want to become a little bit more conservative. They've already experienced the earning years, and now they're going to be in the spending years, and they want that money to be there for them. If you never plan on spending your 401k or 457 or IRA money, and you want to pass it on to beneficiaries, and you want to keep it invested for the long term, you can always pick a target date fund that is continuously in the future. You would have to log in and just pick a new target date fund that's in the future. But if you want it to become more conservative as you get closer to retirement, that target date fund will do it for you. If we were in the 2040 fund today, 10 years from now, it's going to have the mix that the 2030 fund has. And 10 more years from now, it would have the mix that the 2020 fund has. So it is, for those that don't look at their account very often, that don't really get into the investments and what to buy and sell and how do I take advantage of having a long-term investment but not being too risky or or too conservative, the target date fund would be something to consider. Or you could use the target date fund as a template if you're a do-it-yourselfer. If you are a mega do-it-yourselfer, if you look on page 7, we have the individual or the self-directed brokerage account, where if you would rather have some additional choices outside of the 8 core funds, outside of the 12 target date funds, you can open up an account with Schwab, and you can buy, sell stocks, mutual funds, ETFs to your heart's content in that account. You have to have a $5,000 minimum to open up the account, so it would still be your 401k, it would still be your 457 or your IRA, but it would actually be an account with Schwab, Charles Schwab, where you could, if you have a brother-in-law that you trust and he's got the next Apple or the next Google stock and you want to buy some shares of that, you could do that here in the Schwab account. One word of caution though, we recommend that you do not do this account unless you really know what you're doing, because buying and selling individual stocks and mutual funds on your own, you can make a lot of money, but you can also lose a lot of money. So don't let your neighbor risk your 401k if you're not quite sure what they're doing, by taking their stock pick of the day opinion. But the nice thing is you are not limited in your 401k or any of your retirement plans to just what URS offers. The world is your oyster if you open up the Charles Schwab account. So there are no limitations as far as if you want to buy and sell something that's traded on the open market, on the exchanges, you can do that here. There are some additional fees and trading costs associated with the Charles Schwab account, but that is an option. After 4 years, whether you choose the hybrid plan or the DC, and you're vested, this is where you need to decide where that either the entire 10% or the difference between the pension rate and what Box Elder County is putting in. You would need to make some choices on where to invest that money. Or if you started investing on your own, in addition to the hybrid or the DC plan, from day one of when you put your contribution, choice is yours on how to invest it. So if you want to contribute out of your paycheck, the money is always yours. If you leave before you're vested, anything that you have put in is always yours. You can take with you, and from day one of that contribution, you decide how to invest it. If you don't make a decision, the target date, based on your birthday, the default target date will be the choice for you, but you don't have to keep that. Any questions on the savings plans? Okay, so if you have any questions, there's 30 minutes before the next session starts, so I can answer questions for you. Again, our job is to not, the thing I love about my job is I don't have to try to push you in one direction or another, or try to sell you on one investment or another. It is strictly just to help you understand choices, because they are they're great plans. A lot of it just depends on your specific situation. But please don't hesitate if you have questions, because what we don't want is for you to not understand what is a benefit provided by your employer. So, okay, thanks.